So we are looking at chapter 118. I would like to dedicate today's Tehillim class to Tzvi Aryeh Halevi Ben Chana. He should have a refuah shalema. He should be strong and healthy, Bezrat Hashem. And Hashem should bring healing to the entire world.
Amen.
Amen.
We're currently looking at the chapters of Tehillim that are part of the Hallel. And we find ourselves now at chapter 118. This chapter is the longest chapter in the Hallel davening, and it starts off with the words Hodu laHashem ki tov ki la'olam chasto. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his loving kindness endures forever. And we keep coming back to this idea of giving thanks to Hashem, and that Hashem's kindness is everlasting, that the kindness of Hashem lasts forever. The chapter begins with these words, and the chapter ends with these words. And we also find these words repeated several times in the middle of the chapter as well. There are differences of opinion as to what was the kavanah, the intent, when writing this chapter. King David, some say, wrote this chapter about his own salvation, that through his many trials and tribulations, Hashem came through for him. And others say that King David wrote this referring to the future salvation of Bnei Yisrael at the time of the redemption. And if, as we're going to learn this chapter of Tehillim, we'll see that it's compatible with both of these opinions. So David starts off by saying, give thanks to Hashem. And this is really the underlying message of this chapter is gratitude, to give thanks to Hashem. And David HaMelech is making reference to the fact that when Mashiach comes, all of Bnei Yisrael equally will give thanks to Hashem. And actually, as we mentioned in the previous chapter, we see that the whole world, the entire world, are going to recognize Hashem and give praise and thanks to Hashem. One of the things that we should take note of when we read this pasuk, we read this verse, Hodu laHashem ki tov, we should give thanks to Hashem, for he is good. Whenever we give thanks to someone, it is because they were good to us. Therefore, we recognize that goodness. We're grateful. We give thanks to them. But when it comes to thanking Hashem, there is something unique about the goodness of Hashem. And that is ki la'olam chasta. His loving kindness endures forever. It's not dependent on anything. It's not dependent on our behavior. It's not dependent on our merits, but rather, ki la'olam chasto, God's kindness endures forever. And that's something to bear in mind when reading this pasuk, this verse, that we give thanks to Hashem that his kindness endures forever. And that's the theme of this parak, the goodness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the goodness of God. Verse 2, Yomana Yisrael ki la'olam chasto. Let Yisrael say, for his loving kindness endures forever. As we said earlier, Yomana Yisrael is talking about the future. When Mashiach comes, Yomana Yisrael, all the Jewish people will sing together praises and Hallel to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to God. There's another way at looking at this pasuk, at this verse, and what King David is telling us. And the sages tell us that David HaMelech is referring here to his kingship. That Bnei Yisrael, all of Bnei Yisrael should rejoice that Hashem anointed, Hashem chose David HaMelech as their king, because in his righteousness, the reign of David HaMelech, the reign of King David, brought about peace and serenity. The Me'am Loes brings another interpretation of this pasuk and of the previous pasuk. Give thanks to Hashem, for he is good. Hodu la Hashem ki tov ki la'olam chasto. That it's based on a custom, on the practice of Nachum Ish Gamzu. That Nachum Ish Gamzu would say a bracha, would praise Hashem in any given situation, whether it appeared to be a good situation, whether it appeared to be a difficult situation. What was the bracha that he would make? He would say, Hatov v'hametiv, that Hashem is good and Hashem does good. And that's the meaning. Hodu la Hashem ki tov ki la'olam chasto. Give thanks to Hashem, for he is good, for his loving kindness endures forever. And when a person does this, does give thanks to Hashem, that elicits loving kindness towards a person. So on a practical level, every day we should make it our business to be grateful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to thank Hashem for his kindness. I think we should say not even when we are experiencing a difficulty, but especially when one is experiencing a difficult time in their life, to remember how Nachum Ish Gamzu would say the bracha Hatova Hametiv, recognizing and realizing that everything is divine providence, which means that whatever is happening is from Hashem. God is bringing about the environment, the situation, the setting, and Hatova Hametiv, the source of what is going on, is Hashem, who is good and who performs good. And this is something to always bear in mind, as the Midrash tells us, that when we say Hodu la Hashem ki tov, we say at the end ki la'olam chasto, his kindness is everlasting, that Hashem doesn't just show loving kindness to Bnei Yisrael for a year, for 2 years, and then he stops. No, ki la'olam chasto. God's kindness is everlasting, every moment of every day. when we show our gratitude to Hashem, when we recognize this godly manifestation, so we open ourselves up to be the recipient of that loving kindness, and we allow the loving kindness to become part of our daily experience. The Mayam Lois also brings out a point that the Torah is called loving kindness. We know it's called Torah's Chesed, right? And when we say Ki la'olam chasto, for his loving kindness is forever, that is a proclamation that the Torah will be ours forever, that Hashem gave us the Torah. We know it says in Devarim, Torah tziva lanu Moshe marasha kehilas Yaakov, that the Torah is an inheritance for the assembly of Yaakov, and the Torah is called Torah's Chaim, and it's called Torah's Emes, and it's also called Torah's Chesed. So when we say Ki la'olam chasto, that his kindness is everlasting, that makes reference to the Torah that can never be taken away from Bnei Yisrael. So we find in the book of Lamentations as well, we say Chaste Hashem kilo samu, the kindness of Hashem has not ceased, that Hashem's kindness is everlasting. And when we give thanks to Hashem and we recognize that, we become a vessel to receive this continuing kindness. So the kindness that we learn about that took place in the past is continuing, and we can be the recipients of it, la'olam chasto, forever and ever.
Connie?
Yes.
Please, can you tell me what Tehillim we're working from right now?
Perek 118, chapter 118. It's
Thank
part
you.
of the Hallel, and we're now find ourselves at Pasuk Gimel, verse number 3. So in Pasuk Gimel, in verse 3, we say, Yomruna Beis Aaron, ki la'olam chasto. Let the house of Aaron say, for his loving kindness endures forever. So in the previous verse, David HaMelech addresses the Jewish nation as a whole, Nomana Yisrael, let all Jewish people. Now we see David HaMelech points out specifically Beis Aaron, the house of Aharon, which includes the Kohanim and the Leviim. So we know that the Jewish people sung Shira and Hallel to Hashem already in Mitzrayim. That's why in this pasuk, in this verse, the Leviim are not explicitly mentioned. Later on, after the Leviim were singled out for their specific avoda in the Beis Hamikdash, separate from the Kohanim. So we do mention in Tehillim the Leviim separately, but here they are included in Beis Aharon, in the house of Aaron. So it's the Kohanim and in the Leviim. They also should say Ki la'olam chasto, that they should rejoice in the kindness of Hashem that is everlasting. And why are they singled out specifically? We know that in David HaMelech's life, there was a terrible situation that happened where the city of Kohanim was decimated. And David HaMelech says, now that I am becoming king, you no longer have to worry about this. This is going to be a rulership of peace and serenity, and the kindness of Hashem will be apparent for you, and you don't have to worry about it. Yomrana Yirei Hashem ki la'olam chasto. So now, in addition to the Bnei Yisrael reciting Kila Olam Chasto, recognizing that Hashem's kindness is everlasting, and the Kohanim and Leviim, Beis Aaron, the Kohanim and Leviim, recognizing, then Yirei Hashem are those people who are called Yirei Hashem, those who fear Hashem. They are also part of Bnei Israel, put on a pedestal, just as the Kohanim and Leviim are of an elevated status, so too there are great sages, great leaders, great Jews who exemplify Yiras Hashem, fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so like the Nevi'im, the prophets, who would be included in Yirei Hashem. And here, David HaMelech and the Tehillim makes it very clear that all are obligated to praise Hashem and to give thanks to Hashem and to recognize the everlasting kindness. And for each level of Jew, it is something specific and something different in addition to that which we share, our common kindness as a nation that we receive, the common kindness being the Torah that will never be taken away from us, our relationship with our Kadosh Baruch Hu, our special neshama, our special mission that we have been given in this world, which we're going to talk more about in this chapter of Tehillim. So now the chapter continues, and we're going to recite a verse now, which you may recognize. It's something that we say on Rosh Hashanah before the blowing of the shofar. Min hametza karasi ka. Out of the narrow place of distress, I called out to Hashem, Ononi b'merchav ka, and Hashem answered me with expansion or with liberation. You can use either of b'merchav, with expansion, or with liberation. So this is a verse, one of the verses that we say before the blowing of the shofar. And actually the verse itself is an instruction for how the shofar has to be blown. We know that the shofar is an animal horn, most often is used as a ram's horn. And the Code of Jewish Law tells us that if the shofar is blown from the wider part of the horn, then one's obligation has not been fulfilled. One has to blow it from the narrow part, and that's the meaning, min hametza karasi ka, from the narrow straits I call out to Hashem. And this symbolizes the spiritual call of the shofar. And the shofar, whose sound has to start at the narrow end and then goes out to the broader side, symbolizes our spiritual journey in this world. And when we take stock, especially before Rosh Hashanah, we take stock of our spiritual standing. Where are we holding in our relationship with Hashem? Where are we holding in actualizing our purpose in this world, which is to make the world a dwelling place for Hashem? We become aware of the fact that we are not as close to Hashem as we would like to be, because our neshamas, our souls, which are a piece of Hashem, are confined in a body. And the body has an ego and has a lot of self-interest. And that is what holds us back from actualizing our purpose in this world and from being as close to our essence, Hashem. And when we realize that, that causes within us the anguish that in turn translates to the crying out to Hashem. And that's the shofar. The shofar is just a very basic, anguished cry of the neshama, of the soul that wants to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that wants to be close to God. So min ha-meitzar, from the narrow side, meaning literally the narrow side of the shofar karasika, I call out to Hashem. And what does that narrow side of the shofar represent? It represents the narrowness of the expression of the neshama, of the godly soul, to be close to its essence, to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what is the result of that? Onani b'merchavka, that Hashem responds with great expansion, that Hashem says, I am here to help you to accomplish that which you have accomplished. The fact that the Yetzer Hara gets in the way, that the ego gets in the way, that is something that is a part of who you are. It's the way you were created. But the effort that you make and the desire that you have to change that elicits a reaction by Kadosh Baruch Hu, by God, to respond b'merchav, with vastness, that he opens up our channels to allow our nefesh halakis, to allow our godly souls to express itself. And this is something that we don't have to wait until Rosh Hashanah. It's not only on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is specifically an auspicious time to create that environment, but actually every single day before we go to bed at night, we should take the time to contemplate and to think about where we're holding in our relationship with Hashem, in our expression of our godly soul, which is here to allow us the opportunity to fulfill our mission, which we're going to talk again. We're going to bring this point out further along in this chapter. Now it's interesting, if you look at this, it says, Min ha-meitzar karasika, out of the narrow places, meaning out of distress, I called out to Hashem, even when David HaMelech was in a difficult situation. This verse, the sages say, we can learn out from this verse that one who keeps Torah while impoverished will merit to keep the Torah while wealthy. And this is hinted at in the word Ka, the Yud and the Hey, the name of Hashem, which stands for, the Yud is 10, which is the 10 commandments, and the Hey is the 5 books of the Torah. Min ha-meitzar karasika, if I remain connected to the Torah and to the mitzvahs, in meitzah, in difficult times, onani b'merchavka, then I will merit to remain connected and to enjoy the Torah b'merchav, with expansion, with a beautiful response from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from God. The Rebbe Rashab explains, in ha-meitzar karasika, onani b'merchavka, from out of distress I called out to God with abounding relief. God answered me. the name of Hashem used in this pasuk, in this verse, is Ka. Now, Ka is half of the name Yud K Vav K. It's the first two letters Yud K, the Yud and the Hey. When I say Yud K, it's because we're not supposed to say these two letters one after the other. So instead of saying the Hey, I say K, okay? Like you say Elohim instead of Elohim. So Minametza Karosika, the name of Hashem, Yud K, is an abbreviation for the full name, which is the Yud K and the Vav K. The two halves of that name represent two stages in the way that Hashem sends out his energy for creation. So the first two letters, the Yud and the Hey, allude to the undiluted brilliance of Hashem's essence. And the last two letters, the Vav and the Hey, allude to the lesser, the diminution of the light's intensity. And in that way, Hashem's light is expressed in creation. But the Rebbe Rashab points out that in this pasuk, the expression is min hametza karosika. What are we calling out to? What are we asking of Hashem? Karosika. We are asking, our wish is that Hashem should shed his light, should shower us with his light of Yud K, of a light that is unbridled, without any reservation whatsoever. And what does David HaMelech say? Min hametza karosika. We reach out and we ask Hashem to share this unbridled light with us. Anani b'merchav ka. And Hashem responded, God answered b'merchav ka, with a showering of his light that is unbridled. And we can use this in both interpretations, whether it's talking about David HaMelech's personal salvations or whether we are talking about the very near future of the Messianic era when Hashem will shine his light upon us and upon the entire world. Moving along. To Pasuk Vav. So David HaMelech here, remember, he's calling out from a place of Meitzah, from narrow straits. And oftentimes we find ourselves in this situation. And actually this Pasuk, this verse, where we talk about crying out to Hashem in HaMeitzah from a narrow strait, it can either be an individual challenge, an individual difficulty, but we know as a nation, we have been and continue to find ourselves in a narrow strait, in the sense that the Shekhinah, God's presence, is in Golus, is in exile, and until the coming of Mashiach, we are calling out to Hashem in HaMeitzah from the narrow straits. But in the next pasuk, we see a very important thing. King David says, Hashem li, God is for me. Lo ira, I will not fear. Maya aseli adam. What can man do to me? So always Hashem li. Hashem is for me. Lo ira. I'm not going to be afraid of what man could do to me. I will not fear what anyone can do. The only thing that I am afraid of, David HaMelech is saying, is what I might do to myself through my averas, through my sins, because a sin causes a distance between HaKadosh Baruch Hu, between God and between the individual. So Hashem li lo ira, I will not fear. What will I not fear? I will not fear that anybody will cause me to abandon my faith. I won't fear that others will cause me to do something that would compromise my relationship with my essential self, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with God. And in Daniel, we find that Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah said to Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to fear to answer you in this matter. They were sure about their journey in this world and about their relationship with Hashem, and no matter what anybody did or said, that would not interfere with their relationship with God, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the Midrash, it says, Hashem li lo ira ma yaseh adam li. So the Midrash on Tehillim traces this pasuk to our ancestors. So first, Avraham Avinu said, Hashem li lo ira, Hashem is with me, I do not fear. And ma ya'aseh li adam, what can man do to me? He was referring to Nimrod, the king. What can the king do to me? We know Nimrod threw Avraham Avinu into a furnace, into a fire, and Hashem saved him. Then Yitzchak said, Hashem li lo ira, ma ya'aseh adam li. Hashem is with me, I do not fear. What can Abimelech do to me? And Yaakov said, Hashem li lo ira, ma yaseh adam li. What can Esav and Lavan do to me? And David HaMelech said, Hashem li lo ira, ma yaseh adam li. What can Goliath do to me? And in every single one of these situations, we see that their strength and their connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu was always met with graciousness and kindness of Hashem and salvation, great salvation. Hashem li, God is with me. The numerical value of li is 40. Lamed is 30, Yud is 10, and David HaMelech expresses that Hashem stayed with me all the 40 years of my reign and helped me to overcome my enemies. In Pasuk Zayin, verse 7, Hashem li ba'ozrai, ba'ani ere b'sinai. The Lord is for me in my helpers, and I will see those who hate me. What's the meaning of this verse, of this pasuk? Hashem li ba'ozrai. The Lord is for me in my helpers, and I will see those who hate me. David HaMelech is expressing over here that there are those people in his life who present themselves as his helpers, who present themselves as his friends, but secretly they informed upon him. They told the king of his whereabouts. They didn't really have allegiance to David HaMelech. They were not loyal. And David HaMelech says, even those people, I can protect myself. Those people, I trust that Hashem is going to protect me. So even though we always need Hashem's help, but when we know where we stand, we can take the necessary steps to protect ourselves. Those that showed open hate for David HaMelech, David knew to distrust them. But those, and that's what he says, Hashem li ba'ozrai ba'ani ere. The Lord is for me and my helpers, and I will see. Those who are open enemies, I can see that they're open enemies. But those who come off as my helpers, but really they're my enemies, I know that Hashem is going to trust me, is going to help me in that situation. The truth is, we should, each of us, be aware of the fact that every single day there are those that secretly wish to bring harm upon us. We don't even know about it. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu protects us. Hashem saves us from those people. David HaMelech says that when a person is experiencing difficulty, what should they do? They should reach out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, call out to Hashem. As he says in verse 5, out of a narrow place. What did I do when I was in that situation? I called out to Hashem. Not only did I ask for help from Hashem, but I asked for unbelievable help, that Hashem should respond, not with narrowness, but with expansion from his name Ka, from the unbridled light. And that's why David HaMelech could say, Lo ira, I'm not afraid of the enemy, because I know that Hashem is for me, and he gives me the koyach to avenge myself from my enemies. The expression he uses here, the Lord is for me in my helpers. That Hashem sends messengers in this world, and we should never forget where those helpers come from. Those helpers are specific messengers from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're specific messengers from God. So when a person is experiencing a difficulty and somebody comes through for them, where did that person come from? That person was sent specifically by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, specifically by God. That's the meaning. Hashem li ba'oizroi. The Lord is for me in my helpers. When someone comes to help me, I am seeing an angel. I am seeing a messenger of Hashem. Hence the expression we use, you're an angel, right? It's true. When somebody comes to our help, they really are an angel. And the truth is, we can reverse this idea. And what's the reversal of the idea? The reversal of the idea is that we should have our eyes open around us, to our neighbors, to our friends, to the people who are living in our environment. What do they need at any given time? Why? Because then this expression of Hashem li ba'oizroi can be applied to ourselves. We can be that angel. We can have the honor of being the angel of Hashem. Hashem has many ways of sorting out a situation. Honestly, Hashem doesn't even need people to sort out any situation. But in his kindness, Hashem says, you're going to be a part of the chesed. You're going to be a conduit for my kindness, for my chesed. So when we have an opportunity to do a mitzvah of helping another individual, of helping another person, we should remember this pasuk, Hashem li ba'oizroi. I can be that angel. I can be that messenger of God. And surely Hashem doesn't need me. He can find someone else if I'm not going to do that. But I don't want to miss that opportunity. I want to be able to say that I was there as HaKadosh Baruch Hu's malach, as Hashem's angel, to bring chesed to the world, to bring healing to the world, and to help another person. The Me'am Loyes says there's a subtle interpretation of this expression, Hashem li ba'ozroi, and that Hashem is to me with my helpers. That when somebody comes to help me, when another individual comes to help me, I say, Hashem is in my helpers. This is a malach of Hashem. This is an angel of Hashem. Why did they reach out to me? Why did they feel the urge to come and help me and feel kindly towards me? Because Hashem stirred it in their hearts that they should feel that chesed towards me. They should feel that desire to help me. But when I have enemies, I shouldn't blame it on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God forbid. I have to look within. I have to look at myself. I have to blame it on my fault. And then I will see regarding those who hate me that I am the cause, that I have imperfections, I have things that need to be fixed. Hashem li, the Lord is for me, ba'ozroi, in my helpers. So again, the Me'am Loyes says we should compare this to someone who comes before a royal tribunal for judgment, and they're afraid, they're scared of the judge. So the kinsmen tell them, don't be afraid because he's from your hometown. Similarly, Bnei Yisrael, right? We come before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We come before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We come before God, and we should remember that the Eibishter Hashem is our Father, as it says in Devarim, your Father who brought you. And these are beautiful things to remember. When we say at the end of the pasuk, at the end of the verse, we say Ere Basonoi, I will see. That's in the future, so that's making reference to the era of Mashiach. He made Seischa me'eretz Mitzrayim, just like when Hashem took us out of Egypt, Arenu Niflaos, I'm going to show you unbelievable miracles in the era of Mashiach. Now, in Chassidus, there's a very beautiful and powerful message also from this pasuk. Hashem li ba'ozroi. God is with me, with those who help me, and I will see the downfall of my enemies. So who is this referring to when it says ba'ozroi? Frierdiker Rebbe explains that ba'ozroi, those who help me, alludes to the divine sparks that are found within creation. Within every part of creation, there are sparks of godliness. You could call them maybe an neshama. You can compare it to a soul. It's not like the soul of a person, but it's a spark of godliness that is embedded. That's the power that keeps that part of creation alive. And these sparks are in every single part of this world. Whatever you find, whatever you look at in this world, the ocean, the trees, there are these sparks of godliness. And we have a job. We have a mission in this world. Our mission is to discover that potential of godly light within every part of creation. These sparks within that part of creation are called ozroi. They are called helpers. And as we go through life discovering these sparks, we use them for the potential which they have. So in other words, every part of creation is here for the glory of Hashem. To create a dira b'tachtonim, to create a dwelling place for God in this world. We do not see those sparks within that part of creation. In fact, the world, nature in itself, is created in a way that it covers up that spark of godliness. How do we reveal the spark of godliness? Is when we relate to that part of nature with the knowledge that we are here to reveal the spark of God. So for example, when we make a bracha, when we make a blessing on food that is kosher, we reveal the godly energy, actually not just within that specific piece, yes, within that specific piece, but in any part of creation that was used to bring that piece of food to our table. When we learn the halachas, when we learn the laws of any part of the Torah that are connected to specific parts of creation, because mitzvahs are all about, law is all about our interaction with the world, we reveal those godly sparks. And what's the result? So Hashem li ba'ozrai. Hashem is with me when I go out to find those helpers. Those helpers are the elements in the world that contain the spark of God, that are there for me to fulfill my mission in this world, in creating a dwelling place for God by revealing those sparks of godliness within nature. And when I do that, what does Hashem do? Hashem causes great success for me by revealing his light within the world. And Ba'ani Ereba Sinai, and I will see my enemies. Who are the enemies? The enemies are anyone or anything that stands in the way of allowing me to fulfill my purpose in this world, whether it's the Yetzer Hara personally, my own evil inclination, whether it's the evil in the world at large, or even just the covering up of the reality of nature, which is that it is really Hashem, it's really God. Hashem li, God is with me, and he will help me to overcome any obstacles that may come my way. So this is a very, very beautiful interpretation, Hasidic interpretation of this pasuk, that we should be aware that we have helpers all around us. Every interaction that we can have, whether it's interaction at the beautician, whether it's interaction in shul opening a siddur, whether it's interaction with schlepping the garbage out, every part of our daily life, whether it's our struggle that takes us in a certain direction, everything that happens, we want to connect to the core, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is God, and our interaction serves to reveal that godliness. And we're just on this journey, and we're a long way on this journey, where we're going to come to the tipping point, where we have created so much light and brought so much revelation to the world that Hashem will say, now is the time to pick up to open the curtains and to show the light that we have created throughout these thousands of years of Golus, these thousands of years of exile, with the help of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we would never be able to manage any of this but for the presence of Hashem, but for the kindness of Hashem, which is la'olam chasto, it is forever and ever. Hashem never leaves us for a single second. And when we're feeling that narrowness, when we're feeling that darkness, that difficulty, karasi ka, we should call out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we should know that ka, God in his expanded way will respond with expansion and reveal himself with great revelation and love. And we should all be zocha, we should merit to see that car, that revelation of godly light, which each and every single one of us have contributed to in our journey in life. And it should be speedily in our days, as we say, kaheref ayin, in the blink of an eye. I want to wish everybody a Shavua Tov, a beautiful week. I want to remind you that for a good reason, for a simcha, I will not be giving classes Tuesday and Wednesday. I want to remind you that there is an amazing, wonderful speaker tonight at 7 p.m., a journey of infertility, love, adoption, climbing mountains, and overcoming with Chavi Brook. And I encourage everybody, if you have the opportunity, to come and hear this wonderful and inspiring presentation tonight, Bezrat Hashem.
Hashem. Thank